to take questions for Coach.
Coach, talk about the motivation for these getaway games. I guess this is obviously a change in format. What did you sense as your team's eagerness today coming in?
We were eager. We were motivated. I mean, we spent a lot of time in the last 2 days talking about the importance of this next game. We spent time before the game talking about the importance of this game. So, it had nothing to do with the format. It had nothing to do with, the thought of it being a meaningless game in terms of, winning an ACC championship. Our guys, we discussed it at length about, how important this game was today and for us to play, to try to put together a game plan to play our best baseball.
With that said, though, Monte, from what you saw in the dugout, what was going on with your team today? Why they just didn't have it?
Well, we didn't have it because, Lynch threw a lot of pitches at the bottom of the strike zone, and we hit a lot of ground balls. Through 6 innings, we made 21 outs, and 17 of them were on the ground. And the bottom line is you're not going to do damage in the plate unless you hit some balls in the gaps. So, that's the bottom line. 21 outs, 17 of them were on the ground. So he did an excellent job of throwing pitches at the bottom of the strike zone. So offensively, we struggled in that regard. What can we say about the first inning? Pat Crawl's been one of our best pitchers for the last 2 years. He just did not have it today, and he hit some barrels. The first 3 guys got hits, and next thing you know, they're off and running. And at that point, we have to make a decision. Okay, we're going to have to get somebody else going, so we try to get Alex going as quickly as we possibly could. But it takes time to get a guy loose and get him ready in the bullpen to bring him into the ball game. And Virginia's a good offense. Virginia's one of the best offenses in our league. So when they get that type of momentum going, it's very hard to stop them. You got to make pitches and you got to make plays. And it just did not happen for us in the first inning there on the mound. But that being said, Pat's been one of our best pitchers for the last 2 years, and he deserved the opportunity to go out there and start today. Threw well against Virginia earlier in the year, and he's been good for us. But he caught them in a hot inning where they got a lot of momentum going, and offensively we didn't do very much with Lynch. We tried in between innings to talk about getting the ball up. We got to see the ball up. It's throwing a lot of change-ups and a lot of pitches down to the zone, see the baseball up, and bottom line is we were aggressive at pitches out of the strike zone, and you can't do that when you're facing a guy that throws a lot of off-speed pitches and lives kind of at the bottom of the zone. You got to force him to throw the ball up and swinging good pitches to hit, and we just didn't do that today.
Your conversations with Pat when he came out, knowing that this is the worst outing of his career, how did you talk to him about that?
I just pat him on the back. Look, the guy's been awesome for us. You hate to see it for him because he's been so good for us. I don't know if he felt at his best. I'm not sure. I haven't had a chance to talk to him, but I guarantee you he's so down in the dumps based on what happened to him today. It's probably going to take him a couple days just to recover from it because he's that kind of competitor and he's that kind of kid. That kid competes as hard as anybody on our ball club. So, I don't need to say anything to him right now. When the time is right, I'll say something to him. But I feel for him. He's been such a big part of our program, such a big part of our team, and I hate that it happened to him today.
How have you fared against Lynch in the past?
Well, we only faced Lynch earlier in the year, and he threw very well against us.
For those of us not on the team bus, not in the dugout at the team hotel, it looks like when something bad happens that the heads slump over, the shoulders slump, and maybe a little bit of the fight has gone out of the team through all of this. Do you sense that at times?
I don't think it's necessarily that the fight's gone out of the team. I think the biggest thing is once we get our backs against the wall, our guys are pressing a little bit.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about before the game is just trying to take the result and the outcome out of it and just play good baseball. Just play free and easy and compete and let the results take care of themselves. And that was a big message for us today. And, the bottom line is just look at the game. The game was in the first inning. The first inning, they scored 6 runs before you could blink. And at that point, when you give up that many runs and then you make a pitching change in the first, it's very difficult to win a ball game when you make a pitching change in the first inning. And then you're facing a left-hander like Lynch who, pitched really well against us earlier in the year, and we could not find the answer in terms of getting pitches up in the zone and putting good swings on him. So we were going to have to pitch and defend today because Lynch threw a really good game. He was really good. Bottom line is we needed it to be a lower-scoring game because of the way that Lynch threw the ball. But, when you give up that many runs in the first, it's very difficult to come back from that. At that point, we've got to get some balls up. We got to get some guys on base. We got to hope that Lynch walks us and that we get multiple runners on base and somebody hits one out of the park to get the momentum in our dugout. But we didn't do that today, and you got to give Lynch credit. You got to give Virginia credit for that.
Crowell and Eubanks had success against Virginia the first time around. What were your impressions of that lineup then and how they've kind of progressed to this point?
Well, I think they're a better lineup right now, and I mean, just look at their lineup. I mean, you got Clement, McCarthy, you got Hazley, you got Smith, right there in the middle, and you got Cameron Simmons. I think he's hitting sixth. Well, Cameron Simmons is a very dangerous hitter. That guy should be hitting, 3 or 4 in most lineups. He's hitting sixth. You got Pavin Smith, however you say it. I'm no English teacher. And Adam Hazley. Those two guys are first rounders. Okay, so you got 2 first rounders sitting back to back in your lineup. You got a guy like Simmons hitting 6. That's a pretty good lineup. That's why they're the most dangerous lineup. Them and Wake Forest probably the most 2 dangerous lineups in our league.
I saw you after you shook hands, kind of walking back with shaking your head. There's no magic elixir. There's no magic button to push to. How do you get out of it?
I'm trying my best every single day to build our confidence, to work our guys extremely hard in practice to get them better, to look at the things that we need to get better at and work on them and talk about them, and just trying to coach our players and develop our players to the best of my ability. Our coaching staff is fighting with them, and we're just trying to send a message that we're in this thing together. We're all struggling. We're not playing great baseball. Obviously, I need to do a better job of coaching, to get our guys ready to play and to play better baseball. I don't feel like I'm doing a good enough job with our players. I feel like I'm failing our players. But, that's my job. My job is to be accountable for my team, be accountable for my players. And I'm always going to be accountable for my players and how we play because, that's what they brought me here to do. So I can tell you this, when we practice the next day, we're going to practice hard. We're going to go right back to work. We're going to try to do everything we can to get our guys ready to play in the postseason. We are going to play in the postseason. I hope it's in Clemson. If it's not in Clemson, wherever it's going to be, we're going to try to do everything we can between now and then to get our team ready. I'm as frustrated as anybody, but I got to look at myself first. And I got to find the answers. I got to find the answers for a group of guys that believe in what we're doing. They're frustrated. They want to play better. We all want to play better. But it is what it is. We have to deal with it, and we got to get better. And hopefully we can start that process here, probably on Sunday.
Is it possible to kind of hit a reset button? Because all of your goals when you came into the season are still all on the table. Can you just kind of say what's done is done and move on?
Well, it's a new season in the postseason. You get into the field of 64. There's 295 Division I programs and 64 teams get to play in the NCAA tournament. Clemson's going to be one of those 64 teams, so that's a good thing. Once you get in the field of 64, I've been a part of some really magical runs as a coach, as a head coach, and as an assistant coach where we didn't host a regional. I've been to Omaha a couple times where you didn't host a regional. I've been in a super regional where we didn't host a regional, where we were a 4 seed. So I've seen some things happen. The bottom line is you got to get great starting pitching, you got to play good defense, and you got to get timely hitting. And this team is capable of doing that. And, hopefully, whatever happens, we all hope we're playing at Doug Kingsmore next weekend. But that's not up for us to decide. That's going to be for the committee to look at all the resumes and make those decisions. And, if we're at home, awesome. And if we're on the road, that's great too. Wherever we go, we've shown in the past we can win on the road. And, it just takes us playing good baseball. So hopefully we can put our guys in the right mind frame, play good baseball, compete as hard as they can, whatever the scenario is.
Is there any situation in your years as an assistant and a head coach where you've gone into the tournament this kind of slumped and trying to keep your team positive and saying, hey, look, we can reset?
I have. Yeah, I've been through it before where you struggled down the stretch and had to go on the road and play pretty well. So, again, it takes one game. And the postseason is a different animal altogether. I mean, everybody knows what's at stake. So everybody's, fighting and clawing as hard as they can to win that first game. You got to win that first game to put yourself in that winner's bracket game. So, once you get into the postseason, heightened awareness peaks with the players. And, as a coach, you pretty much sit back and watch them play. The work is done. We've worked as hard as we can to get to that point. I think the guys understand what it takes as a team to be successful. You just hope your guys are ready physically and mentally, and they go compete as hard as they can.
Thank you, Coach.
All right.
Coach.